All right, I think we're there, Director Wong. Okay. Okay. All right, there we go.
Very good. Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you all today. What I'd like to do is just share some highlights of the Ada County Highway District, give you a little idea of who we are, what we do, some of our responsibilities, and how we can integrate with all of our city partners. So with that, Mr. Mayor, since Stacy will be on the line to tell you what the director meant to say as we go through this entire presentation and such. That being said, Mr. Mayor, if I could just say next slide, whoever's controlling that, there we go. In a quick nutshell, this is our elected leadership, but I'm sure you're familiar with all of them. Currently, Commissioner May is our president. She's serving in a one-year term, and the commission will meet in January to determine who will be the next mayor, or excuse me, the next commissioner. And Commissioner Goldthorpe down in the CUNA area is the vice president. Next slide, please. I call this ACHD 101. And what it basically does is give you a very brief background of who we are and how we got here. In 1971, the legislature did approve the ACHD to stand up after a rather large vote of the populace. At that time, there was a lot of concern about the discrepancies between how dollars were spent by each city in their infrastructure, and there was some disproportionality for that. So ACHD was created. We are governed by a 5-member board. The taxpayers own a lot of assets that we run for them. We are somewhat of a large organization. Currently, we have 367.5, and as I always say, I'm looking for the 0.5 member of our team and such. But those are full-time team members. We generally employ up to 100 temporary and interns across the year. We have the commission is responsible to all 6 cities, of course, Ada County. We work with the governor's office, with the federal representatives here on a lot of the areas. And as you can see, we have a rather large annual impact, economic impact into all of Ada County. The taxpayers own a lot of mileage here within Ada County, and a lot of infrastructure, as you can see on the slide. But we also, taxpayers own two large industrial complexes, many headquarters buildings, different operations across the board. We also operate the country, well, I'll call it Idaho's only profitable alternate transportation system called commuter ride. It's a very interesting business model that we set up, and it works incredibly well. And as a matter of fact, today, during the governor's 4-phase order, we have been asked to continue to run commuter ride to support the essential first responders and essential businesses. So we're operating 50 routes today for fire, hospitals, active duty military, and the Guard. But at the end of the day, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff there. Next slide, please. So just how big are we? Well, you can drive from here to New York and back and still have a couple miles left over just on the infrastructure within Ada County. Of course, looking at all the residential and collector and arterial road structure that we maintain for the taxpayers. And it does come at a price. We average about $61,000 a year just in maintenance and preventive maintenance operations to keep that infrastructure well. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, council members and Mr. Mayor, this is what we do when it's all said and done. We are not a road department by any stretch of the imagination. We are the single consolidated highway district in Idaho, and I believe the single regional highway district in the country and such. We work with your staff very closely. We have a great relationship with your staffs on integrating what you believe are the next steps for the growth in STAR. And we try to match that with transportation operations to make your vision a reality. We are intimately involved and engaged with the public on all of our projects. We will host multiple open houses, multiple public information series, online, in person, and both at the headquarters and in different areas across the county to make sure that we gain the public's input and present that to the commission. And at the end of the day, I very respectfully like to share with everybody that our commissioners are truly honest brokers. They have to wear a regional hat, even though they come from different parts of Ada County. And that is very difficult at times when it comes down to decisions that they have to make, which may not be popular in one part of the Ada County, but again, as a regional entity, they do their best to be honest brokers. Next slide, please. These are our priorities. We set this up years ago, and it comes down to, I'm sure, the similar ones that you have for STAR. Our first priority is our people. We believe very strongly that people are profit centers, and we invest in our people heavily. And we've had some very, very great results by making that happen. We also look at every opportunity to be effective and efficient in our operations. I will share with you later that our overhead here at the Ada County Highway District generally ranges from 6 to 7% for the budget. That is incredible based on what we do and how we do it. We do leverage a lot of technology. We do invest in technology and new concepts and new ideas. We're currently looking at a different aspect of designing a road infrastructure that might be able to leverage something other than asphalt. It's being worked in Sweden, it's being worked in Europe, and so we are looking at that very, very hardly. And of course, as with STAR, safety is paramount in the operation. We enjoy a very, how do I say it, a very competitive health insurance record. And for the last several years, we've seen zero increase in our health insurance and our safety insurance operations based on all the programs that we've put in place to ensure the health and safety of our people and, of course, all of our customers. Next slide, please.
Loved it so much. They started saying so many nice things.
What was that? Our capital, the Commission's capital allocation methodology, and how, in other words, how they allocate the taxpayer funds is a three-step process. I won't go into specifics in here, but the bottom line, our first priority is to meet our programming obligations, and they are divided into those three major categories set by the legislature and set by policy by the Commission. Our primary focus on everything we do is safety and maintenance, because at the end of the day, the taxpayers in Ada County get the biggest buck and biggest bang on their investment based on the proactive maintenance operations that we do, from chip sealing to crack sealing to all the different things that we do every year to extend the life of that road structure so that we can spend 17 cents a square foot versus $17 a square foot in going under having to repair and redig up roads. Of course, our secondary focus, which is a big deal to the Commission, is what we call system enhancements. That's your neighborhood bike and pedestrian facilities that are funded by the vehicle registration fees. And then, of course, our non-impact fee capital projects, safe routes to schools, community programs, those sorts of things that we put into our integrated 5-year work plan based on the inputs that each city, all the school districts, and the county send to us. And as you all know, we're working those right now. Next slide, please. A lot of people don't realize this, but we're actually international ambassadors for Idaho. We have hosted all of those countries that you see on the slide there based on a request from the U.S. State Department. As I said earlier, we are unique. We are probably the only regionally and consolidated highway district around. So a lot of these countries want to visit us to understand a couple things. Number one, how do we manage working with so many different elected officials and so many different organizations without having a massive amount of corruption in the system? You can look at the different countries, they're all great, but you can probably understand the reason for their interest in that section. They also come to us to understand how we can maintain such a large infrastructure with the current people we have, with the equipment we have, and how we integrate ethics into our operation. It's very humbling when we are asked by the State Department to do this. And what's interesting, we actually have some of our countries, and I think Bhutan was the key example of wanting to take a lot of our equipment back with them because they don't have the benefits of being able to own and operate the modern infrastructure and equipment that we do. So we thought it was kind of nice. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We also give back to the community. As a small government organization, you can see the numbers there. We actually, our team members actually pick a charity per year, and we put on a little golf tournament. And at that golf tournament, we are able to change lives and to support those different charities. My only rules of engagement are that they have to be involving families, children, or the military. Along those lines. And as you can see, this was last year's. Those are some big numbers. Next slide, please. We've done also a year prior, the Idaho Guard and Reserve Family Support Fund donated $180,000 after the golf tournament was done. Next slide, please. Following year, or following year, was the Camp Rainbow Gold, where we were able to raise $170,000 to help them in purchasing that land. You probably all know about, and continuing that great program that they support. This year's charity we've selected is the Waiakan Warriors. And so we'll be supporting that tremendous organization. I think, Stacy, September 12th, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, out at golf tournament. So you'll all get invitations and hopefully you'll be able to help out with that. Next slide, please. We also participate in the Idaho Patriot Thunder. I know some of you are well acquainted with this, but this is the annual military support ride that High Desert Harley-Davidson and a couple of us put on to generate dollars for both the Operation Warm Heart at Mountain Home Air Force Base and the Idaho Guard and Reserve Family Support Fund. It is highly successful. It's generally held on the first Sunday in June. We have moved that to 20 September this year based on the pandemic that is affecting so many people. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we do it? We've transformed how ACHD plans into their operations. We approach it with a strategic plan, which the commission has approved, and that is basically the umbrella, the overarching strategy of what we want to do, how we want to do it. And we're looking 20 plus years out, gathering all the best information we can from the cities, Compass, business. We have multiple advisory groups, from commercial developers to our ADA advisory group, to our bicycle advisory group, our pedestrian advisory group. And we meet again with city leaderships and state, and in some cases federal leadership, to understand where Idaho might be and what the requirement for the Ada County Highway District might be to support those visions that each city has. That rolls into our capital improvement plan. We review this every fourth year, and that is the area where we look at what we need to fund for the next 20 years to be able to hit those milestones that our strategic plan has laid out. I will tell you very candidly that the old phrase, vision without funding is a hallucination, is true here. Our capital improvement plan over the years is about $300 to $350 million underfunded today. And the commission is dealing with that, and we're working through that plan. That rolls into something that's very important to every city and to the county. That's the integrated 5-year work plan. It is a collaborative process that takes about 8 months to get through. It involves that initial start from me, that letter that goes out to each mayor and each school district and Ada County and Boise State University, to understand what their objectives is going to be for those next 5 years and what their requirements are. Those requests come back into us. We work very closely with each of the city staffs to understand the what, the where, and the why. And then at that point, based on the prioritization program that the commission has approved, we go back and forth with each city and say, here's what we think. And at the end of it, I think in September, we will approach the commission and say, at the end of the day, here's our recommendation, commissioners, from capital improvement plans to safe routes to schools, to community programs, to city-specific requests, and we'll give it to the commission, and we'll go from there. And they'll make that final determination and approve that integrated 5-year work plan based on our link to our 2-year budget strategy. The budget is, we initiated this several years back. I hate to use the term, but we use a Pentagon military approach to budget operations. There are about 36 to 38 touches to this program, from beginning to the final presentation, the public presentation that the commission will decide they'll either agree with or not. The commission will have up to 4 very long sessions where we will go line by line through that budget and answer every question. And it's open to the public, every question, every concern, every dollar amount. It's laid out for them so that they're not surprised in August 21st, I think it is, where we will come to them in a public forum and say, here's our recommendation. This is your opportunity, your final opportunity to go yes or no. We also host 2 public forums, both for the integrated 5-year work plan and the budget, where we invite the public into the building and we stream it. It's online. We have all of our systems out so that we can articulate what we're thinking, and then we sit back and engage the public. I have all of our key staffers there, from deputy directors to managers to project officers, so that they can answer those questions and field recommendations from the public. You might have seen right now on our website, we do have that integrated 5-year work plan up, and it is interactive. You can actually go on the website, look at what the different plans are, what our thinking is at that time frame, and you can actually put comments back in where our staff will review them and then get back to you. So it is a very, very integrated process, and I'd like to say that it is bounded by a very intense public engagement operation with the commissioners, with your staffs, and with the public overall. And it's in progress right now as we move forward. Next slide, please. I'd like to speak just a little bit about the state of your ACHD's the district. Next slide, please. These are the key check marks that our commissioners have asked us to accomplish when it comes down to how we do it. And I'm pleased to report to you, even during the pandemic and even during the governor's 4-phase order, we are still hitting all of those requirements with a combination of work on site, work at home, and COVID-19 support to all of our folks. This is what every month we will go to the commission and say we're on target or we're not, and such. And they're all self-explanatory, but for a large organization, your ACHD is doing a very good job on hitting all those. So the proof is in the pudding. Next slide, please. We have all of the pavement here in Ada County assessed by an outside agency outside of Idaho to ensure no misperceptions as to what your road conditions are. We hire a group called NCE. They're out of California. They are professional engineers who specifically engage in road analysis. They're the gold standard. They're known nationwide. And they come in every 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, to assess our infra 2 to 3 years. They're in town as we speak, and they'll be starting this year's assessment here in just a couple days. And so as you can see, your Ada County Highway District and your infrastructure rates very well across the country. What we've put up here are some similar sized areas with similar sized road structures. And as you can see, we do very, very well in assuring that we have the best infrastructure pavement in all the Northwest and some of the best across the country. Next slide, please. We also participate, we have an annual highway report that we must send to ITD and that we must send, and that is sent to the governor in his, as you can see, this was 2019. Across the board, overhead is tremendous where it should be. Again, going back to the effective operational mode. And these are the funding allocations that we have done. As you recall, a couple of years ago, the legislature authorized HB 312, which is a couple cents extra in sales tax that went to most of it to ITD and then ferried out to the local highway districts. We are required, and we do, give a very detailed report as to every penny that is in that account and where it's spent, because it has to be spent on maintenance across the board. And I'm happy to announce that every year we have met that requirement. As a matter of fact, we over-program so that if an additional dollar comes through, which it does at times, we're able to immediately execute it in those maintenance programs that the legislature has set out. With that being said, next slide, please. Let's talk about this year's budget. As you know, last year, with the interesting funding that was available on the loss of the initiative to raise registration fees, we had some very tough decisions to make. And so we moved a lot of money from the FY20, we moved it into FY20, I'm sorry, from FY19. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to program and meet the projects that we had promised we would do, and we did. We had set up a future facilities fund on improving the headquarters here and both our maintenance organizations. We made the decision to remove that funding and put it into the infrastructure and put it into projects for all the cities. That was the right thing to do. And we did withhold any type of COLA increase for our executive team and the commission. Again, during that time, that was the right thing to do for us. So next slide, for 2020, here are the numbers. Across the board, we have a balanced budget. These are the numbers we're working with. We are on track to execute those at above the 92%. We generally hit about between 96 to 98% execution rate. And then the leftover is encumbrance, which goes into the next quarter because projects that were focused to be done in the fiscal year ending 1 October, generally done by our contractors in the calendar year at the end of December. So bottom line, as you can see, a lot of dollars that we are working with right now, and we are on target to execute those and the projects that we have that the commission has approved and directed us to do. Next slide. I like to show this to all of our elected officials, and you should have received our FY19. I did send those out. We do this annually so that you can see exactly where we get our dollars and exactly where the commission directs that we execute those dollars at. So looking from a timeline perspective, which I like to do, from 05 to 19, bottom line, the revenues are in blue. That's where taxpayers executed dollars to the Ada County Highway District, and the red is where we expended it. And as you can see across the board, the commission over time is doing a tremendous job on wearing that regional hat and balancing out the dollars for that regional infrastructure, that regional road structure to include sidewalks, bikeways, pedestrian facilities, and of course travel lanes across Ada County. Next slide, please. Now, based on the current integrated 5-year work plan, which again, we are now working the next year's one with your staff, this is where we project the dollars will come from and the dollars will be executed in. And this points toward growth, where developers are investing and where cities are investing in their infrastructure. Next slide. And then looking from 05 through the current integrated 5-year work plan, this is where we are projecting the dollars to be when we reach that 2025 or 2024, I'm sorry, end state. Again, there is some projection in there based on history and that sort of things. Next slide. As I think you know, we own, the taxpayers own and we operate a large fleet of operations. I just want to show you a couple statistics on that fleet. We're very proud of the fact that our mechanics can maintain that fleet at a 99% in-service rate. That is amazing based on the number of miles that are driven and the time we put on all the systems and supporting all of the different requirements that each city and the county has set for us, and the state legislature. Next slide. But I did want to share a couple things that are on the horizon that I'm sure you're also looking at, but we look at on a daily basis, and that is what I call the three-tiered crossroads, and they have to do with growth, 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 and then of course funding. Next slide. First one, you just go back, go next slide, please. It's the population. Next slide. It should be a bill there. Next one. There we go. This, council members, this is what it looks like. These are current and then projections from Compass, our commercial developers, the different agencies that we deal with as to what this is going to look like in Ada County. As you can see, growth even during this time of this pandemic, and the challenge of funding, it's projected not to slow down and such. Next slide. And so based on what history has shown us, this is what the residential only permits have been, and we are expecting 31,000 housing units additionally by 2025, just in the Ada County area alone. And as you can imagine, that too does not include commercial, nor other or schools and such, which are also on the horizon. Next slide, please. Then we go to the infrastructure. Next slide. System age. Your ACHD is faced with a huge challenge on being able to maintain those road structures with different types of roads, different types of construction requirements based on age, and different types of, quite frankly, chemical and mix that has gone into today's environment. As you can see toward the east, a lot of old structure, which provides huge challenges to our engineers and to our construction partners on assuring they maintain that and upgrade that. As you move to the west, where growth has gone, you see more of it's a different type of design characteristics and a different type of application. So we have to balance all of those different thoughts on how roads should have been constructed, are being constructed today, with again a finite budget when it comes down to how do we make sure that the road structure does not fall apart. I go back to my initial comment: preventive maintenance. That's what we focus on, and again, as you can see, the roads are rated incredibly well. Next slide, please. System growth. We're adding a lot of lane miles every year to the system, and we figure that there's going to be about 400 extra lane miles from today's environment by 2025. And if you think about that, that's 5 years from now. And such. So it is a huge challenge that we are working, and of course the commission is working this every day, and it goes back to how do we maximize the finite amount of funding with ensuring that the road structures meet all users' requirements in the best condition we can make it, and the safest. Next slide. And then let's get the funding. Up front, I wanted to share with you right up front, this is what we are limited to do. We've had multiple and great requests to help other agencies increase transit, look at how do we support VRT. By the law, we cannot. When it's all said and done, when ACHD was created, the statutes were very clear, and the legislature, they do a tremendous job. But this is what is the box that the commission and your ACHD is in at this time. Next slide. These are our major sources of funding. I'm sure they reflect your cities, but a lot of it comes through property tax. Now, I will share with you something that we are sharing with the commission tomorrow. I'm not going to make a commitment on this because it's up to the commission. But tomorrow we are hosting our first in a multiple series of overviews of what we are thinking the 21-22 budgets might look like, what the revenues might look like. Our recommendation to the commission will be zero tax increase based on the challenges that Idaho and the nation will have. We think it's the right thing to do. Will there be some very tough recommendations that we will make to the commission? Yes. Will there be some very tough decisions the commission has got to make? Yes. But at the end of the day, with listening to the experts, both in Idaho and nationally, when they are predicting the third and fourth quarter income and then looking toward next year, we believe, and I'm sure our commission will be very supportive, that during this very difficult time of unemployment, the right thing to do is no property taxes for the Ada County Highway District as we move forward. Highway impact users fee, we expect to see a decline in that. Based on this last couple of months, people are driving less. Impact fees, we think they're going to continue to go up. We're going to look at approximately $20 million plus or minus a couple in impact fee coming into 21 based on what we know and what we think we know on the construction of both residential and commercial in Ada County. The vehicle registration fees, it's interesting. We have seen in the past an increase in the dollars that are coming because more people are coming to Idaho, more people are registering their vehicles and such. However, it still does not fund the requirements that were set out for that. Next slide. We have the commission has additional funding options, and we have gone through this with them on multiple occasions. And I just want to share this with you so that you know where the commission stands at this point in time. Registration fees, we tried, the voters said no. Truck fees, legislature said no. Increased sales tax, legislature said no. That was a push last year, if I'm not mistaken, last session. Local option tax, legislature has said no. Property tax, new growth, we can do that, but it's not popular, and our recommendation this year is no. Bonding with interest, the commission has that authority, but it is not popular with the taxpayer, and as you all know, bonding comes out of property taxes as people pay that back. Then foregone, that is not popular with taxpayers nor the legislature. We do have foregone revenue that we could take, but the commission has been very adamant about this, at least the time that I've been here, that that is not an option for us moving forward. And so next slide. So with that, I know that was a very quick down and dirty overview of who we are, what we do, some of the things we can do, some of our challenges and such, but I'm willing to stand for any questions that you might have at this point.
Any questions from council to Director Wong?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Keys?
So Director Wong, first of all, thanks for coming tonight. And, you know, part of the reason for this presentation was came out of a meeting that Mayor Chadwick and I had with you and your staff and Commissioner May here a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. That had to do with STAR establishing an adequate public facilities ordinance. And you had mentioned that you had wanted to do this really as a precursor to us going any further with that. But it's something certainly that I am keenly interested in pursuing as aggressively as we can. And so my question is, now that we've done this, you know, what do you see? Well, first of all, let me back up. So can you recap for the council the timing that was discussed by your staff about what it might take to accomplish that? And then from there, I'd like to get your sense of what you think that the city can do to accelerate that as much as we can, and then talk about some potential interim steps.
Just a little bit of history. The Ada County Highway District years back was championing with a couple other partner cities the idea of adequate public facilities that should be in place prior to development occurring and such. It didn't go well and such. It was before my time. But what occurred is that when cities at that time, city leadership at that time, realized that this would limit their ability or their right to determine land use operations and land use decisions. They pulled back because, again, the idea of having the infrastructure in place first before a development could occur, both commercial and residential, had the very distinct opportunity to negate those developments, which it would impact city funding. Got it? That was great. A couple years ago, our commission, one of our commissioners, teed that up again with, at that time, that city leadership group, and it again was not well received. The fact that it would require a lot of investment, and it would require, I'm going to say this as diplomatically as I can, it would require a collaborative agreement and collaborative energy amongst all of the city leaders and, of course, Ada County. That at what point was not deemed to be possible, so that it was again put on the wayside. The statute and the requirements for this process is huge. It is not something that one city can start and work through by themselves. They're going to need partners to make this happen, again, based on the Ada County Highway District being a regional operation. Now, that all being said, what the cities must look at is not just residential, but commercial, and their own comp plans have got to be put in place first. That stipulates what each city believes is their vision, because in the past, when we have raised this issue, a city that had a pretty good idea of their residential expansion, with one commercial development or one commercial addition, would blow that completely out of the water, and it would negate the planning that had gone into an adequate facilities operation. So when it comes down to, is this the right thing to do? I won't speak for the commission, but for me, yes, it is. Is it, what does it take? I think it takes a collaborative effort between all cities and the Ada County Highway District and the Ada County Commission leadership to start the ball rolling. Because at the end of the day, this is also going to be an issue for the legislature when it's all said and done. And but I would suggest you, sir, that I believe our commissioners would be on board. I know that a couple of them are on board right now and such, but it is a very lengthy process. It begins with discussions on comp plans and a firm understanding of what has been already entitled and what cities might want to look at in the future. Because one of the things that, and not Star, but one of our cities, when they came in the past about this issue, our team took a look at their formalized comp plan, and they had already entitled thousands of roofs. And to build the infrastructure to make that happen would have required the Ada County Highway District to utilize all plus more of its annual budget for years, which meant that other city leaders would not be very happy about that when it was all said and done. So that's the challenge. Is the adequate facilities a great thing? Yes. Is it very difficult? Yes. Is it something that I think, again, and I can't speak for the commission, it's their decision, but do I think it's an absolutely worthwhile effort? Yes. But you need to be prepared for the long haul. Does that sort of answer that question?
It does, and I wanted to make sure that the rest of the council had heard that, because it was something that, that certainly I think Mayor Chadwick and I received that message. But we'd also discussed the potential to take some interim action, and potentially it could be as little as changing the content and structure of some of the reports that we get from your staff with applications. And I'd be certainly very interested in starting conversations like that with you and your staff to get us different information that could potentially be actionable for us. And really what inspired this was the, when we were reading about what ACHD and the city of Kuna were going through here last winter, and the inability of ACHD to act on things, and the fact that the things that were being impacted were well outside the city limits of Kuna, so they were reluctant to do some things, and so you kind of ended up with this gap. And I think that at the end of the day, it would be in the interest of the city of Star to figure out how to begin to address issues in that gap, if you will, because our city and your agency certainly have different goals and different charters by the state that overlap somewhat, but they leave gaps in other areas.
Let me address that, sir. First off, if there are things specific that city leadership would like our staff to provide, let me know specifically, and we'll provide them. It's very easy. It takes a little bit of effort. At the same token, we had that same arrangement with all other 5 cities, Ada County, the legislature, and of course the federal elected officials too. It's amazing the phone calls we do get, and we are very responsive to that. As to the start on this, again, I believe the commission is commission leadership is very supportive, and I will say this is that I think that the tremendous partnering that STAR has now with our staff and leadership is phenomenal. To be candid, that had not occurred in the past and such, and there were some things that I would assume that may have been important to STAR that was never communicated to the Ada County Highway District, so they weren't acted on. So I'm very enthusiastic about the way the council and the mayor is moving forward, and this comes from a guy. I'm not going to speak for the commission, but I will say that our president is very impressed and wants to be a partner.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Wong? I just have a couple for you, sir, if you don't mind. If you
No, absolutely.
Can you just go back real quick on the public forums that you're going to be doing? I think you said there's 2 of them for the integrated 5-year work plan. Do you by chance have those dates, or do we need to look those up on the website?
I don't have them in front of me, but I will have them sent to you. I believe we've already completed the first one of each.
Okay.
Those were in early March, if I'm not mistaken. Stacy, isn't that correct?
Yes, we had the first one in March, right before the orders. It was like one of our last public meetings. And then the second one is usually not scheduled until July, so that then the full budget book is out for comment.
But Mr. Mayor, we'll make sure that you and your council are well aware of that and such. And as I read the governor's 4-phased order, if everything goes well, phase 4 will end around June 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. Again, that's the reason why Stacy's on the line to ensure that what the director meant to say was this.
Perfect. And one other question there. We talk about impact fees. Can you just expand on what impact fees can be used for? Because there's a misinterpretation of that, I think, amongst our general public out there and ourselves.
In a nutshell, they cannot be used for known deficiencies. The legislature has been very clear. They can be used, it's for congestion management, intersections, widening of roadways. Perfect example right now is the Linda Bridge project that we're going to be tackling for Eagle. It's about over the span of the entire project, it's about an $18 million project will be widening Linder from its current 2 to 5 lanes, and that will incorporate widening 3 bridges out there. So impact fees can pay for that as a congestion relief, congestion management thing, but it cannot pay for any of the, if we remove the current road. It's an interesting series of restrictions that the legislature has put on us. We can use it for, we can't use it for bikeways and such. We can't, if I'm not mistaken, use it for most sidewalk stuff. That has to come out of our general fund. And at the end of it, we also have to match the impact fees that we use with general fund revenue. So it is a balance of, if we have the appropriate amount of general fund to match to the impact fees, we can then move forward. As I said earlier, funding being key, as general fund revenue declines, then our ability to use impact fees also declines. One of the worst things that can happen is that we have impact fee revenue in the bank and we're not immediately putting it back in the road structure. We're not there and such. We may be coming close in the out years, depending upon, again, growth here in Ada County, and then the commissions and taxpayers' ability or support of funding those certain things. But the commission is, we're working a couple, we'll call it recommendations to the commission and to the legislature, because it is there's both a state statute and a constitutional statute on how impact fees are addressed and how they're used. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy to send you just a very quick summary of all of the pluses and minuses for impact fee. I can have that to you this week.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And
you bet.
And the would that include that? Isn't there a certain classification of road that can and can't use impact fees as well?
Well, yeah, we can't use them on locals. There are collectors and arterials.
Arterial system, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again, Stacy. I'm sorry.
Arterial.
It's the arterials. The collectors we can exact from developers.
Okay. So arterials.
Yeah, and that's the challenge we have with a couple of the cities, in that in their city structure, there are no or very few arterials. So we are limited by state statute of using impact fee revenue in those municipalities. That is something we are attempting to address this summer, going into this coming legislative session. Mr. Mayor, I'll keep you posted on how we do.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions there for Director Wong? None?
No,
Hearing
just
none.
thank you.
I appreciate you, Director Wong and Stacy, for coming on board here tonight and educating us and our public about ACHD. It's been fantastic.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. And Mr. Mayor, again, please let us know anything you need. We'll do our best to support it.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. We're going to move on to item 6A. We need a motion to table the Whitener rezone and PUD. We're going to table that indefinitely because we still have to do a workshop with those folks before we can determine when we have our next hearing with them.
We have that scheduled for next 19th.
Oh, the workshop with them for the 19th? Okay, good. Do I get a motion? Can I get a motion to table the Whitener rezone?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hershey?
I make a motion that we table the Whitener rezone and PUD indefinitely at this time.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Item 6B, the Landon Village subdivision. That one's going to be tabled indefinitely as well. I believe they have a access issue that they have to work out. So I'd like to entertain a motion on that one as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the Landon Village subdivision indefinitely.
I second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I only heard 3 ayes, I think.
Two of them tied.
2 of them tied. Okay, that motion carries. Land and Village will be tabled indefinitely. Item 6C, this one was scheduled originally for, I believe, tonight. You guys have not seen this one at all. But we're going to table this to June 2nd, 2020, when we can have a public hearing. Entertain a motion to table this one as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys,
I'd like to make a motion that we table the Riken subdivision public hearing until June 2nd, 2020.
Second that.
we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Awesome. On to item 7 for reports. Do you have something to say there, Chief? Well, yeah, we'll have you speak on that mic there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mayor, Council, Jake Vogt, Chief of Police here in Star. I just wanted to give a quick report and an update on our river status. I spoke with the Boise River Water Master last Thursday. The river flows passing Star are approximately 250 CFS, which is pretty darn low. So this year, they didn't really expect any need for flood control. So everything coming out right now is just diversions for irrigation, what they need to do just for normal stuff. So they're actually having some concerns about actually filling the reservoirs. So it's kind of a complete opposite of a year ago. So that also always brings up the next question of, when will we say it's safe to recreate in the river? I can say that I'm never really comfortable saying it's safe. It's a natural flowing river with a lot of changes. So although you never hear me say that it's quote safe to recreate in the river, currently it is at the flow that people normally do it in the summertime. So I went by there earlier before coming to the meeting, and there were a few folks out there recreating in the river. So I think we're in a good spot with the river. Of course, everything can change with weather updates and all that stuff. But as of right now, the Boise River Water Master does not project any need to go into flood control and raise it from what it is right now. So that is all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. And that's so everybody's aware at this time, we're not putting any signage out that we had made last year because it's not necessary. It's just the water's cold.
Yes, the water is high 40s right now. So that's the only thing that I would advise people, just be aware it's really chilly.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Councilman Hershey?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 2 real quick things. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee met, and Ada County's got a new Director of Operations, Jess Asla, and I'll be meeting to discuss STAR and the Solid Waste Committee, what we do and concerns we have. That's at a future date. We haven't quite set that yet. And second, with the food bank, we have the summer lunch program coming up. We do believe we'll be unrestricted for that by the time it happens, or at least for the majority. However, they are in need of wipes like Lysol and Clorox because they're hard to find, and they need an awful lot of them for that program because it's outdoors and lots of kids get touched. A lot of people participate in it. So that's all that's met so far. Everything else is being canceled or tabled.
All right. Thank you, sir. Councilman Keys?
Mr. Mayor, so Director Wong had talked about the 5-year work plan meeting in March. And I just wanted to let you know that I was there along with a member of the Transportation Committee. And as you'll recall, at that point, we were pretty far along in our draft for projects that we wanted to submit to ACHD. So we did have a conversation with staff about the projects and trying to get them into that plan and adding some urgency to that. Let's see, next item is I've been working with the Transportation Committee to reclassify many of the collectors we have in STAR into arterials. I think many of them have reached the threshold that would allow that reclassification, and once to reclassify them into arterials, it exposes them to eligibility for impact fee money. When Director Wong talked about the fact that there are some cities who just don't have a lot of arterials, I think STAR is the top of that list. So we're trying to get that fixed. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman?
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Nielsen?
Likewise, my committees either are not meeting
It's quiet
or
right
haven't
now.
met.
Right, right. Sean, do you have anything to report? I skipped you, sorry.
No, I'm good.
Okay, just a few items here. You guys asked me about the plumber light in the last meeting. I got a confirmation from Craig Groves that the outfit, I found out there's only two outfits in this valley that do lights. They do 95% of the lights out here. So one of them is the one that's, I think it's Power Plus that's doing this light over here. They had that, a couple of their superintendents have that accident, but they assured us that they will be on site to start this project on June 1st on there, with a completion target date of mid-July. That's the plumber light. I wanted to introduce Miss Meredith Hudson over here. She's our new deputy city clerk. I don't know if anybody, probably can't see her right now on there, which is fine. You'll see her later. So she kind of got thrown to the wolves tonight with the meeting. So that's been fantastic. Down there at the Star River Walk, I had a meeting, with the new ponds and stuff. I had a meeting with Fish and Game. Sean and I did a walk back there, and we're working with them on future planning of stocking those ponds at no cost to the city for our citizens to utilize for fishing. And we're working on some other ideas for that park concept down there. I just want to say, remind everybody, please fill out your census. That's important for funding and the like for our state. And also make sure you folks vote. Get your absentee ballots. That's the only way we can vote this year. Get those requested so you can get out there and make your voice heard. With that said, I think we're done for the night, and we're going to adjourn our meeting here in about probably 5 to 10 minutes. We'll be set up for a second meeting for a workshop tonight. So this meeting's adjourned.
Mayor, this is Chris. Are we staying on the same
No,
call-in
sir.
number?
No, it's a separate one.
Okay, so I can leave this one and call in the other one?
Yes.
Get out of here. Oh, come back. Come back to another one.